Мы для них папа с мамой, мы волки для них. Да ты мой красавица. Сережа у нас для Соха, он мама. Он у меня соску берет, выплевывает, орет как резаный. Маму давай. Марусь, на, лежи. Так, а что у нас тут за стая? Игорь, иди отсюда.
А здесь у нас что?
Скорее всего, электротравма. Ну вот, провели операцию ампутации.
The European Union's chief negotiators met with the United Kingdom in what they're calling the start of a last attempt to clinch a post-Brexit trade deal. The EU's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, told Parliament they are prepared for the possibility of a no-deal Brexit.
Je ne peux pas vous dire quelle sera l'issue de cette dernière ligne droite.
I cannot tell you what the outcome will be of this final straight line of negotiations. This is why we must be ready for all scenarios. This is also why a series of texts, including contingency measures, are being submitted for your vote to prepare us for a possible no deal.
While UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he hopes the EU sees some sense.
Obviously, the UK's position is always that we want to keep talking if there's any chance of a deal. But I have to say that things are looking difficult, and there's a gap that needs to be bridged. We hope that our EU friends will see sense and come to the table with something themselves. So because that's really where we are.
He went on to reiterate that if a deal is not reached by that December 31st deadline, the UK will trade on World Trade Organization rules. This means tariffs for both sides. Amid the pandemic, we've discussed the many sectors that continue to struggle. One of them, the auto industry. New data by Edmunds, the online automotive resource, showed that in 2020, the U.S. market had its lowest sales volume since 2012, forecasted at 14.4 million new car sales. This shows a 15.5% decline from 2019. But the fourth quarter may be looking up. Edmunds forecasts 4.03 million new cars and trucks will be sold. And with U.S. auto production up 0.4% in November, how much hope is there for the sector? Well, to answer this and more, let's bring in the car coach, Lauren Fix. Lauren, good to see you.
Good to see you.
What kind of recovery are we looking at here for 2021 with an auto sales really being at an 8-year low?
Well, there's been a lot of pent-up demand for new car sales on a global basis because people weren't buying cars. They were kind of sitting on what they had. If you were leasing, which is very common here in the U.S., people are waiting and extending their lease terms, and that can be done if you're coming to the end of your lease, contacting the leasing company. And so that brings up to about 1 million cars a month being traded in, and there weren't vehicles to be exchanged because there was no production or lack of components to finish production. But now that parts are starting to roll in, we're seeing an increase in production. So 2021 vehicles will be up, and I think we're going to see a pretty good year. My guesstimations based on numbers are going to be somewhere in the 16 million range. It won't be as high as it was in 2019, but I think we're going to see a really good year for automotive.
Yeah, we're seeing production really vamp up again since COVID-19. At least it's one of the sectors that has started to and kind of come back. IHS Markit, it's forecasting a rebound in light vehicle production of 14%. They're looking at about 84.3 million units based on the current analysis they have. Now, this reflects continued recoveries, right? Particularly when it comes to major markets, China, Europe, and here, the United States and North America. Do you expect this to happen?
Yeah, I expect on a global basis you're going to see an increase in sales. And remember, we had a huge hurt across the whole entire planet. So because of that, we weren't able to get product out to people, and people weren't buying product because they were sitting at home and waiting. Now, when you're talking about China, in July, we saw a start of a ramp up of sales, and we're starting to see a big increase, especially from the month of November. We're going to see China basically come back to where they were. It'll be flat by the end of the year. So there's a lot of sales going on a global basis. Europe is a little bit behind, but we're going to see a lot of increase in electric vehicles from NIO, from Tesla, from BYD and China. And we're also going to see an increase in sales here in the U.S. And every manufacturer is ramping up for that because they know that people really want to get new vehicles and they've been kind of waiting. And so what you're seeing happen instead is used car sales, of which last year was 41 million vehicles in the U.S. and North America. You will see that increase in dollar value about 10 to 15%, with pickup trucks leading the pack, followed by SUVs and sedans. So we're seeing huge increases in used car sales and demand.
And we know China, for example, which, like you said, we're seeing them have a quicker recovery, right? Their auto sector has been pretty quick in this week. Spokeswoman for China's National Development and Reform Commission, Meng Wei, said the year-on-year decrease has contracted to around 3%. That's nothing in both auto outputs and sales. That's for the first 11 months so far. Is this a reflection of what we're going to hope to see across the world then?
I think we're going to see a reflection across the world. Of course, China is going to be back up and running quicker. They seem to have gotten through the pandemic. They are starting to vaccinate people. And as vaccines become more and more popular, people will have more and more confidence in purchasing new vehicles and getting out there and getting back to remotely normal life. Europe will come behind. It's going to be a little bit on the slower side, but I think Japan and a lot of the other Asian countries will perk up much quicker. We're going to see a big change for next year. I think next year's auto sales are going to be huge, as well as the oil sector. You're going to see a big increase there as well.
That's what we're hoping for, a big recovery here, and sooner rather than later. I want to shift gears here. You mentioned electric vehicles. Policymakers here in the U.S. and here in Washington specifically, they're being called to help with support of these cars through incentives, infrastructure investment. President-elect Joe Biden, he's been more vocal in supporting these electric vehicles compared to what we saw under a Trump administration. Is this going to be something he pushes even more?
Oh, I think there's going to be a huge push for the Green New Deal type of getting people to buy electric cars. There isn't a big take here in the U.S. About 2% is about average. So there's been no increase because of COVID or without COVID. And manufacturers are not making money on any of the vehicles they're selling. There's no manufacturer to this day making money on electric vehicles. They make money off of carbon credits here in the U.S., especially Tesla, which has bolstered their bottom line. As you see, they're getting on the S&P next week, so that's big for them, and it'll help their stock value. But when you're looking at on a global basis with electric vehicles, we have a problem with infrastructure. China has the same problem. The grid cannot support every single vehicle going electric, and that's trillions and trillions of dollars to get the structure up. Not just that, is you don't have enough charging stations. Right now there's around 40,000 charging stations, and the Biden administration is talking about 500,000 charging stations, of which the grid definitely can't support. It's not a connected grid. It hasn't been updated in many centuries, a century just about, pretty much there. So you have to think about, if that's not updated, we have to update the infrastructure in order to get the charging stations in place. And who's going to fund that? And the government can only fund so much of that, so there'll be a lot of private industry involved as well.
Well, in Tesla, you said obviously they were waiting for them to join the S&P. Meanwhile, traditional car companies like GM, Ford, and FCA, they're only about a fraction of Tesla's market cap. Is this really the future of the auto industry?
Well, I don't think electric cars are the future of the auto industry. I think it's a piece of the auto industry. There's going to always be a different form of propulsion. So there'll be gas and diesel. We're also going to see some new technology coming, compressed natural gas, propane, and you're seeing a lot of hybrids. We've talked before when I was on about blue gas. That's something that China's invested over $60 billion in, and that is a combination of hydrogen. And that's going to be used to charge electric vehicles as well as propel gas-powered vehicles. So this is some new technology we're starting to see. We also have algae coming in on the forefront. So start keeping your eyes open for new forms of energy. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that as we move into the future.
We're definitely going to see more of that in the years to come, given the Biden administration. Lauren Fix, the car coach, thank you as always for breaking this down for us.
Thank you.
That's all for now. You can catch Boombust on demand on the Portable TV app, or simply check it out at portable.tv, and we'll see you next time.
Sometimes it's nice to own something real that you can hold in your hand and one day pass on to your loved ones. This free guide from Direct Bullion told me everything I needed to know so I could start my own collection of gold coins and bullion bars. All the gold they sell is VAT free, and they're specialists on hand to guide and support their customers. For your free Direct Bullion guide to buying gold, call 0800 055 7050.
Invest in buy-to-let cars and you could get an average annual return of up to 11%.
What was that?
Invest in buy-to-let cars and you could get an average annual return of up to 11%.
Really?
Look, it's perfectly simple. Invest in buy-to-let cars and you could get an average annual return of up to 11%. Buy-to-let Cars has been helping people make their money work harder since 2012. For further information, visit buytoletcars.com.
Bullion by Post is the UK's #1 online bullion dealer. At Bullion by Post, we make it easy to buy and sell gold and silver. We stock a wide range of coins, bars and collectibles. Bullion by Post have delivered over 300,000 orders and are proud to have received over 19,000 customer reviews. All orders include free insured delivery. We also offer secure storage. For live prices or to find out more, call 0800 825 0000 or visit bullionbypost.co.uk.
The biggest strike in the history of the world is underway in India. Tens of millions of farmers have marched on the capital of New Delhi. And not a lot of people know that, at least not here. Still fewer know why and what they're asking for. And who was the real Robert Fisk? You want to find out, I promise you, in the wake of the historic revisionism after the great man was dead. It's all coming up this week on the Sputnik.
Fellow citizens, the Red Peril is gone, but another eastern threat is growing. The Green Menace, and the target is you. Russia's weapon of mass communication is spreading globally, increasing its power and impact radius. Megatons of propaganda from TVs, computers, and mobile devices. More than 12 billion contaminated content views on YouTube affect your mind. Protect against alternative vision. Act fast. If you start to question more, evacuate. Seek shelter. Isolate the contaminated. In approved media. Stay undercover until it is safe outside. If you get exposed to RT active waves, decontaminate your mind. Wash out your eyes, ears, and brain. Make everything clear. Get checked out. You can defend yourself and your loved ones from the weapon of mass communication. Protect from RT. Don't give the enemy a single view.
In the morning Moscow time, headlining this hour, the US Food and Drug Administration reveals it's now probing 5 allergic reactions to the Pfizer vaccine, including 2 Alaska health workers taken ill earlier this week. As a top US consultant to vaccine manufacturers tells RT that while he's optimistic about COVID jabs, only time will tell if it's a magic bullet against the pandemic.
I'm not pessimistic about vaccines at least reducing the infection. Whether they will completely obliterate the infection remains to be seen.
And British MPs are shocked after Parliament leader Jacob Rees-Mogg comes out against UNICEF feeding poor UK children for the first time in its history. Good morning from Moscow. Then this Saturday, Kevin Owen here with the update this weekend from RT International's World Newsroom. First, authorities in the US have said that they're now investigating 5 adverse responses to the Pfizer COVID vaccine, including 2 Alaska health workers.
I think we'll be looking at all of the data we can from each of these reactions to sort out exactly what happened. And we'll also be looking to try to understand which component of the vaccine might be helping to produce them.
It comes just hours after a second vaccine by Moderna was approved by the FDA. Meantime, as you can see, Vice President Mike Pence getting the Pfizer shot live on TV earlier along with his wife. Pence added that American vaccines, he said, are safe.
Karen and I were more than happy to step forward before this week was out to take the safe and effective coronavirus vaccine that we have secured and produced for the American people.
Well, let's now go through confirmed cases of allergic reactions to the Pfizer jab, shall we? 2 Alaska health workers had to be rushed to hospital, with 1 still receiving treatment. It's among the 5 cases the FDA is probing. Britain's also registered 2 cases with adverse reactions to the Pfizer shot. The country's health officials have warned against vaccinating those with a history of allergies. There's also controversy that Americans can't sue Pfizer or Moderna as well, you may be surprised to hear. In February, authorities brought in the Public Readiness and Emergencies Preparedness, or PrEP Act. It provides immunity for all vaccine makers for 4 years. Trial lawyer Rogie Dunn told us about the situation there.
If they are sick and they miss a couple of days of work and they don't feel good for 3 or 4 weeks, they're going to get 0 compensation. Under the American legal system, typically an individual injured by a product or service can sue. And you can have a class action where literally tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people can sue. Well, the government, when they implemented this warp speed to have a vaccine develop much faster than normal, the companies weren't willing to do that for fear that they might get sued. So the government said, we will protect you, companies, so you can't be sued.
Meanwhile, in Brazil, there's also controversy about the response to the pandemic as its Supreme Court approves mandatory vaccination. We get the reaction from locals later in our programme. A top US physician and consultant to vaccine manufacturers spoke to our channel about the state of COVID jabs. Stanley Plotkin told us whether the shots can actually stop the pandemic.
Many people fear vaccines, and this is true throughout the world. And yet, when one really looks at the record, vaccines in general have been quite safe. Now, the thing that one has to understand is risk. If the risk of the disease, as it is for COVID-19, let's say is 20%, that's 2 in every 10 people, right? And the risk of reactions to the vaccines that I'm familiar with is about 1 in a million. So if you compare the risks, if you're intelligent, you would take the vaccine. What we don't know for any of the vaccines thus far is whether they will